This week on Ryan and Megan, we're going to be discussing mentorship and professional development as a traveler.
Welcome into episode number 12. We are Ryan and Megan, two traveling physical therapists. We travel with our two daughters, 2 under 2, and we're bringing this podcast to you today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be discussing, what does mentorship look like? What does professional development look like as a travel therapist? So we're going to really lean on our therapy side because we are travel physical therapists. So this will be a little less for the nurses, but there'll be some things that you can glean from for our few nurse friends that listen to our podcast. But a lot of this experience is coming from probably more the therapy side of it.
Yes, and before we get into things, please consider leaving a 5-star review if you've listened to our podcast and found them helpful, or if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and like them and subscribe. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, so mentorship is a big buzzword. I would also say it's a wonderful marketing term that the travel companies use. I mean, not the travel, all companies.
Yeah.
You'll have travel companies out there that say, we have mentorship. Any job, any permanent job that you apply for, whether it's at an outpatient clinic, a hospital, a skilled nursing facility, anywhere, they're going to say, we have mentorship. That's probably going to be on their job listing, mentorship opportunities. But the question you need to ask is, what are the mentorship opportunities? What do they look like? Give me the details is what you need to ask.
Yeah, that's a good point. When we were still finishing up school, it was told to us that it was really important to have mentorship coming out. And it is, and it can be really helpful. But it kind of felt like the only place to find mentorship was a permanent job. And not every permanent job was going to offer mentorship, but if they did, then it was going to be really great. And that was kind of like how the picture of it was painted in my mind. And then come to find out, most places do claim to have mentorship, but it can look all different ways. And so really it is important to ask, what does it look like, and to figure out what is actually helpful for you.
So we were really curious because as new grads, we hopped right into travel therapy. We didn't hesitate. We didn't take a permanent job. We had our clinicals in school, graduated, and then our very first real big boy and big girl job was a travel contract. And so that's all we knew. And so about a year into that, we were like, well, it seems like we're getting mentorship. It seems like we're developing our skills as therapists. I wonder what it looks like. Is it that much better as a permanent staff employee? So we actually polled our graduating Doctor of Physical Therapy class on our Facebook page anonymously on kind of like, what does your mentorship look like? And we gave them some various different options. Is it just simply, I can ask a therapist that I work with, a coworker, questions whenever I want. There was stuff as, is it formal? Do you have like set aside time each day or maybe once a week where you are training with a veteran therapist, someone who's been working for 20 plus years or so? Is there an organized class that you go through? Are you doing a residency? What did your mentorship look like as a permanent staff employee? And I think the results were actually pretty surprising for a class of new grads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to cover it because it's a little foggy in my mind.
Yeah, so basically, a lot of them fell into the category that we were in, where they were promised mentorship if they took this job. So they took that job. And then really what the mentorship added up to be was, hey, we have some therapists that have been working for 10, 15, 20 plus years that you're going to get to work with. And they're very knowledgeable. They're great therapists. And you can ask them questions. You can, if you find something interesting, pick their brain, maybe watch them, but you're still going to have to meet your productivity as your own therapist. So there's not really set aside time. It's probably going to have to be outside that time zone because, if you're an outpatient clinic and you're a busy clinic and you're seeing 1-2 people every 30, 45 minutes, you're not going to have time to then go over and talk with Joe, the therapist, and learn his techniques. It's going to have to be on your lunch break. It's going to have to be afterwards. And you better hope that Joe wants to teach you. So that's really how mentorship looked. And then they would also give you, I know another big one that they mentioned was they gave you CEU money. so continuing education money, that you could go do courses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And-
I will say the only time it really differed from the new grads that took permanent jobs was if they specifically talked about it in their thing that they signed when they went on permanent, and they said, hey, I really want mentorship, and they pursued figuring out what it was going to look like before they signed on the dotted line.
They negotiated. So we had a few people from our class really negotiate that mentorship. And just like Megan said, before they signed on to work for someone, they were like, okay, I want every Friday to just be my mentorship day, where I get to shadow a PT of my choosing, or maybe a PT that you would recommend at the clinic. And basically, I either have a really light load where maybe I'm seeing only a few patients on Friday, or I'm not seeing any patients on Friday, but I am training, and I'm going to do that for this certain amount of weeks, and then start learning some of those skills. And that's a great way to do it. So if you're a young therapist and you're not going to do travel therapy, but you're going to go perm, really ask about, what does your mentorship look like? Is it just online classes that your company offers, that you can take in your free time? Well, you can do that on MedBridge and use our code. But, you really got to ask those questions. And so after we took that poll, after talking to fellow therapists, we really felt like, well, we're not at a huge disadvantage as travelers in the mentorship and the professional development sector.
No. And I think that was one big concern going into travel as a new grad, was kind of concerns over, am I sacrificing mentorship, and am I sacrificing professional development? Am I just going to be a mediocre PT forever because I chose to do travel? So basically what we're saying is that from polling other therapists and kind of living the travel lifestyle as a new grad, we found that it's pretty comparable. Because if you are a new grad going into travel and you've listened to some of our other videos on the right questions to ask in your interview to figure out if it's going to be a new grad friendly place, you can figure out if there's going to be mentorship at your travel assignment in the form of having other therapists there that have a lot of experience that you can talk to and ask questions, and have support around you instead of just being on your own.
What we have to understand is that permanent physical therapy jobs, or occupational therapy, speech, permanent physical therapy jobs are no different than travel jobs. So all the contracts that we've taken, we've worked in places 3 to 6 months, sometimes a little bit longer. Those are like places they're trying to hire new grads or just therapists on permanently, and they offer mentorship. And so just like if I went there as a permanent staff employee as a new grad, and they were waving the mentorship marketing scheme in front of me, I would probably get the same mentorship. Where it's different as a traveler is your time frame. So as a permanent therapist, you have a little bit more leeway of, okay, I'm going to be here a year or two. As a traveler, if you want to learn from a therapist, you might only have 13 weeks or 3 months. Might not be enough time to really dig in, but it is a significant amount of time that you can learn different techniques, get a taste for maybe that skill, whether it's like McKinsey technique, or I really think of outpatient stuff. But you get a little taste of it, and then that can really steer your continuing education. That can steer your reading, and that's how it's going to be mostly as a permanent staff person too. You just have a little bit more longevity in perm compared to travel.
Yeah, and then something else we haven't touched on yet this episode is the mentorship that the travel companies offer. Because like Ryan said, mentorship is kind of a big buzzword for permanent jobs, but also travel companies have that built in to what they offer, especially new grads. And so kind of the form, you want to say something about it?
Yeah, there's like tons of different forms. And so each travel company is different. Again, ask what they mean by mentorship, because travel companies use it as a marketing scheme also.
Yeah.
But simply just ask what it looks like. So it can look like maybe they have a bunch of recruiters that are former PTs or are PTs, PTAs, and then you can call your recruiter or call someone in the company that maybe is a therapist managing it, and you can ask them therapy questions.
Yeah. So that's usually the form that it takes when they're offering it as your travel company. They'll say, hey, we'll pair you up with a therapist that you can have all the contact information to and reach out to them anytime you have a question, or we've got people in our company,
You're right. Sometimes I've seen some companies, usually it's the smaller ones, they'll do a buddy mentorship thing too, where if they have a new grad PT, they might pair them with like a more veteran traveler, someone who's been a therapist for a while. And really they just kind of exchange contacts, and then they can kind of coach you through what it means to be a traveler, what it means to be a therapist, changing jobs, which can be really beneficial. I mean, honestly, that's kind of like what we do. We talk about our experience, and as therapists, and we help people, they kind of talk to us. So some companies do that internally. So I've seen that also.
Yeah.
I think the most beneficial for me personally has always been wherever I go for those 3 months, I have it in my mind, I'm going to try to learn something new from someone. And it might be small, but it might also be big. I've had the way I treat really shaped by different therapists that I've met along the way. And I really think that's one of the huge perks, which we'll kind of get into later in the podcast, of how travel can really excel or push your professional development more than maybe a permanent staff position if you're kind of stuck in one place.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as like offering CEU money goes, how you mentioned earlier that permanent places might do that, travel companies do that as well. So it's kind of an even wash if you're considering, hey, I'm really scared that I'm not going to get the support that I need to develop professionally. You're going to get that CEU money either way. Sometimes you might not get it at a perm place if you don't negotiate for it. So most travel contracts do give you some sort of reimbursement for CEUs when you take a contract.
Right. So much per year for that travel company.
Right.
For your CEUs.
Yeah.
Which what's kind of nice is if you're like us and you work with multiple recruiters and multiple travel companies, if you switch, maybe you use 2 or 3 companies in a year because you take multiple contracts, you can get the CEU money from each travel company.
Yeah, that is nice. You do typically turn in a receipt for the CEUs that you're getting reimbursed for. So don't think that it's just extra money that can be thrown on top of your salary for that contract because you're taking it with a different company. But it does mean that, you might have like an opportunity to go to some sort of seminar in between your contracts, and you can get that reimbursed from one of your contract companies.
Yeah, one of your travel companies.
And maybe you can take 2 of those a year, and you usually wouldn't be able to do that or something.
I think of a lot of in-person courses, which are always beneficial in person. I think of online. So again, we mentioned MedBridge. That's our online CEU thing that we have. We also have a discount code for up to $150 off, I believe, a membership for a year.
We'll link it down below. I believe it's JMDPT, right?
Yes.
That's
I'll put a code up and we'll have it down below, but you can use that code and get money off. But that's an online database of video seminars that you can get, and you instantly get CEU credit for it. Super helpful. I've learned so much from that.
We've been really enjoying John O'Halloran. I believe that's his name. Is John his first name?
I believe so.
Yeah. We've been really enjoying some seminars that he's done on there. The like advanced aging part 1 and part 2 that he was a part of was really good. So if you're looking for a couple, those are some that we recommend.
Like what would you normally do? Like how have you developed on a travel contract?
I think that you just get the benefit of seeing other clinicians practice and learning from what they do, whether that's like efficiency and how they're able to maximize what they document in the time so that they can have really good patient care, but also do a good job at documenting what you're doing while you're with the patient. And then there's all different types of ways people practice. So you can take little tidbits, honestly, of like the best things that you see people do, especially if you're not necessarily looking for mentorship on your travel contract, but you do have a couple days of training when you start a new contract. That's usually when I pick up the most tips because I'm not with people every day, usually in the home health setting. But I do usually get trained for a couple days right at the beginning when I'm taking a new contract. And I really have learned a lot of different small little tips from people just from 1 or 2 days going around with them. So it's just practical, small, and you take what you like and leave what you don't.
Right. I think as far as professional development opportunities as a traveler, we've went over CEUs, so online courses, going to courses like CSM. That's a really big one. Another one would be if you are on a contract and you have a therapist that you really admire, you like their skill, maybe they're getting really great outcomes for their patients. Don't hesitate to go over there and ask questions on the lunch hour, after hours, in between patients. Ask the questions that you need to ask because you have a limited amount of time and you want to learn from them. And honestly, everyone who I have come up to and I've asked questions, I've wondered about their technique. People love talking about themselves, and they're usually proud of what they can do. And so you are complimenting them by saying, "Hey,
Oh, yeah.
how are you treating your back patients so well? And what's that technique you're using? And wow, I've never seen that exercise. Explain to me what you're focusing on." Ask those questions. And then a follow-up question you need to always end those conversations with is, what resources did you learn that from? That has probably been the most beneficial for me. I simply ask them, what resources did you learn that technique from? Where did you learn that exercise from? Very rarely do people say, "Oh, I just made it up because I was thinking about it one day." If they say that, they're a genius and they're probably teaching at a university. And then you really want to be a mentor of them. But most of the time they'll say, "Oh, I took this course on MedBridge," or "I read this book on how to treat your back." And I don't know how many times I've taken that in and I don't hesitate on, okay, well, I'll buy that book or I'll look into that course or I'll take that course. And then I can learn kind of what they're doing without having to spend multiple
Filter
days,
through and sort
multiple
through.
weeks, or like every Friday working with that person as they teach me through it. I can now get caught up kind of on their resources, and then I know what questions to ask. Because if you're reading that book that they learned how to treat backs a certain way, you can ask like, "Well, I've read this. What does that mean?" And then you can get some of those pointed questions. This accelerates your learning. I do this a lot, so that's kind of my outpatient approach. In home health, it's a little different if you do home health because you're on the road a lot. You don't see a bunch of people. You maybe have a meeting once or twice a week where you see other therapists. So development opportunities are a little harder. So you really got to learn on your own. But where there's a bonus is you sit a lot in your car and you ride a lot in the car, so you can listen a lot. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of CEUs courses, books on audio. Again, I'm learning on the times I'm away from that therapist I'm hoping to get mentored by. And then I ask them questions when I have the opportunity. And that kind of connects everything together. And that can really accelerate your professional development because you're putting in that time, even though it didn't look like that formal. When someone says there's mentorship opportunities, it doesn't look like, I think, what most people imagined as like someone's holding our hand and teaching us every little technique and correcting us, kind of like how it was in school. It's not always quite like that. If you want that experience, that isn't bad, they call that a residency and you got to pay more money for it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good tip of taking, their resources that they've already kind of sifted through, and it kind of gives you a good directed way to go. So beyond just mentorship, we kind of want to move into like professional development as a traveler, because that's another thing that you might be worried that you're not focusing on and you need to focus on it, or you do want to focus on it eventually. Is travel going to set you back from that? That was definitely, I think, something in the back of my mind starting it as a new grad.
Especially coming out of school.
Especially coming out of school because they push that.
They push it so much. Your professors, your school push professional development so much. And you feel like, man, if I don't go into a residency or if I don't learn from the top researcher, that I'm going to be this horrible therapist. And that's not the case. You have patients who need your knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the ultimate
even without
thing.
the professional development right out of school, you do have a lot of knowledge and can help people.
Oh, yeah. They prepare you very well in school nowadays. A lot of the things that's kind of the growing pains is just learning your flow and then just kind of staying up with some new techniques.
Mm-hmm. But I do think that travel in a way does contribute to your professional development. And yeah, so the ways that travel's contributing to your professional development is that you're in multiple systems, seeing multiple settings, and you're under multiple managements. And we'll kind of break down like what I mean by that and how it contributes to your professional development. So we'll start with multiple settings. So as a traveler, you have the opportunity to switch the setting that you're working in every 3 months. And you might not do that because there's probably some that you're more comfortable with, but there is the opportunity, and most likely you will end up in more than one setting during your period of travel, however long that is, as long as it's longer than one contract.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. Some people, I think, look at the working in multiple settings, they're really fearful of it. But I think we need to look at it as an opportunity that you can use, or you don't have to. So what I mean by opportunity is, as a new grad, you might be coming out, you had clinicals in a few different settings, but maybe you're kind of like, I didn't really have a good clinical in acute, and I kind of want to see what that's like. Well, travel is like an awesome way to try out a new setting because you're only locked in for like 13 weeks, and you can do anything for 13 weeks. And your education that you got at school, you are super smart. You are smart enough to go into these different settings with maybe some therapist support. And so that's a good question to ask on your interview with the facility. Is there going to be other therapists there to support you? But you are smart enough to help these patients, and you get the opportunity to try out this new setting and see if you like it. Because after 13 weeks, you'll know if like, oh no, I do not like the skilled nursing facility. Then guess what? You don't have to take another contract there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you really like home health or you really like outpatient, you don't have to go through multiple settings. You can just look for outpatient jobs. It narrows your job search, but you can do that. So I look at it as an opportunity. If you're one of those people that's just a little unsure, you don't know what you want to do, and maybe you're going to travel for a few years and then go permanent. And so you're trying to figure out, what do I want to go permanent for? Because when you go permanent, you're signing on for a year or two, and you're really locked into a place. So it's a little harder to try something.
Yes. And something that I really think contributes to your professional development in regards to being in multiple settings is it's showing you the care continuum of patients. If you do take jobs in multiple settings, you can see a patient in acute care where they say they come into the hospital. You see them in acute care, and there you're preparing them for going home. Well, then you take a job in home health and you see them right after the hospital, and you're preparing them for staying in their home and being independent. Well, maybe you need to refer them to outpatient after you see them in home health because you know they could benefit more from something, but home health isn't appropriate anymore. So now you're getting a well-rounded picture of a patient, and it's informing how you're going to treat them and what goals you're going to make and where you're going to kind of set their mind on to help motivate them. I think that is a huge strong point of travelers, getting to kind of see that in action. Whereas a permanent therapist, you probably are in one setting and you might not have a good idea of what other therapists are doing in the other settings, what your patient has already seen, what they've learned, their state of mind when they were learning it. Sometimes patients don't retain things from different settings because there's so much medication or they're sleep deprived. So I think that's a huge plus.
I think that's a huge bonus because, just like you said, you're getting to see the patient in all of its different forms. And then that really helps you as a therapist know what you need to do to help benefit them for whatever their next step is. Because the reality is that patient is coming from somewhere, and then they're going to leave your care to something else. Even if that's independent at home, they're going to desire to do something. And sometimes I think as therapists, we get so locked into, I have my day, I have my certain amount of patients each day, and this is my whole life because we do it over and over. But you got to understand that patient sees you like once a week, twice a week, and then they have a life outside that, or maybe they had a life before that, right? In the hospital, in the skilled nursing facility, and they're coming to you and they're needing specific care in your setting. That's why they're coming to you. And so it can really help you be the best therapist you can be.
Yeah.
And so you get a little glimpse of it. Even one contract in a different setting, just like why they tell you to diversify your clinicals in school. You get a little experience in that. That little taste is enough to really excel and propel your professional development.
And honestly, I think having that perspective has really informed a lot of my treatment. I just think it's really effective in kind of teaching you as a therapist how to be the best therapist you can for that patient where they are in that moment.
Another one that you mentioned was you're going to be under different managements. And what you mean by this is, since you're taking different contracts, you're going to have different therapy managers, you're going to have different teammates, you're going to be under different companies. So not just your travel company, but like your facility. So you're going to be working at different hospitals. And let us be the first to tell you, if you didn't already know, everyone works a little bit differently. All systems run a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be surprising because you'll go to one contract and man, they work so well. Management's perfect. Every place has their little kind of gripes and office drama, but you'll have a place that just is real oiled up and just the gears are running perfect, right? And then you'll go to a place that's a train wreck. Not that they're doing anything unethical, but maybe they're just not working very efficiently. Their scheduling's all off. They're trying to push too many patients, but then they're confused on some of their new documentation system they just switched over to. And you're just kind of like, whoa, you all are nice, but this isn't operating well. Let me tell you about this place back here. And so it's very interesting to see these different places and the pros and the cons of it, because if most of them, maybe they're from that town, they've worked at maybe that place their whole life, or maybe that place and the one other place across town, and it all probably operates very similarly, so they don't know much difference. But you get to come in and you see the contrast pretty stark.
Right. So you've been working under multiple different, like you were saying, managements, and I think this can give you a leg up if you are looking to eventually one day work in management. You can say, hey, I've worked with a lot of different companies who have been managed very differently. I've seen what works and what doesn't work. I would love to implement the things that have worked over my time. You can even take notes of it and keep a notebook just so that you remember them and can, use that to your advantage in your professional career. But you do get exposed to that, and it's something that you can contribute to new contracts when you step into them as well, to try and help and implement, help things run smoothly. But you definitely get that exposure. And then lastly is that you're in multiple different systems. So by that, it's kind of works in with the under multiple different managements. But by that, I just mean you're working with lots of different people. You're working in different companies, like as a big whole, but especially working with different people. And that's teaching you how to be a teammate, come together, work with people, help people out, and kind of see maybe where they're struggling and where they really need help.
If you can
that's a good skill to have too.
If you can just imagine your time that you've spent with your classmates on your clinicals with your coworkers then, or even maybe you're a therapist currently working at a permanent job, just think about the different personalities you work with. And now imagine that, but you're moving to different states. And we already know different states have very varying opinions, very different therapy styles, East Coast, West Coast, rural, Midwest. And so you're going into these different environments, and you're there to help them. You're there to learn. And then you're also learning how to be a great team player, because you don't want to go in there and just disrupt everything. You want to go in there and help out. And so you're learning how to deal with people maybe you don't normally deal with, interact with people and work with people as a therapy team, maybe PT, and you're working with an OT. So it really develops that team skill side of things, where sometimes I think, you get that a little bit at a permanent job, but then it never changes, so you never grow. So it like grows initially, and then you get used to your team, and then you're kind of stuck. But here you have an opportunity to be with a new team and really test your team skills. And so that's really awesome. All of those professional benefits, those are the things permanent job and our people who are hiring are looking for. So you might travel for a few years and then bounce. to bounce out to a permanent job. And those are things you can put on the resume. You can say, hey, I've worked in these different systems. I've worked in these different settings. I have a really great idea of the continuum of care. I really like this setting because of these reasons. I've worked with these different people and these different therapy styles. Maybe it's I've worked under this management, and that's why I would be a really great manager for you. I know what works well and what doesn't work well. And so you can leverage that. And then even
Making it sound pretty good.
Even as a traveler, I've been able to negotiate and manage for jobs because I can say, hey, I've been a home health therapist in these different systems. I've used these different medical records. This thing's work, this thing's doesn't. I'm familiar with that. And I can kind of negotiate that and say kind of how I've learned along my way and how I can be a benefit to you for this short amount of time. And that kind of gets you a little leg up on getting the job.
That's great. I think that deserves a little moment of silence or round of applause or something.
Round of applause. Moment of silence sounds bad. We're like dying or something.
So I would say before we move on from the professional development, I think those are the major things that we have witnessed and experienced in our time traveling. But I would say some more typical ways you would usually pursue professional development through like continuing education or residency. Those things are all still possible. Usually residencies are very intensive and you're in one place for a while. So it might not take that form, but if you're like looking to be a certain style therapist, you can still do that research and study that.
I would say there's only 2 opportunities that you can't quite do with travel, mentorship and professional development wise. One's a residency. If you want the residency style, if you want that schoolwork, you got to go to the residency. You got to apply for the residency and you got to be there. And that's okay. That sounds like an awesome opportunity. The other one is if you're looking for a mentorship that's going to be long, but it's not quite a residency, but it's written in your contract to where like, okay, every Friday I team up with this person and I basically watch them treat and they're teaching me the whole time. Permanent job's going to be way better for that. And then I would add a third one. If you want to be a researcher, if research is your thing, it's really hard to research if you're constantly changing. And so being plugged into somewhere probably close to a university would be that third one. So travel can't really meet those needs, but it can meet about every other mentorship, professional development need out there. You just got to pursue it.
Yeah.
So
anything else?
Nothing else. I think that really covers it. I know that's a big question for most of you. It was a huge question for us coming out as new grads. And so hopefully we answer some of those questions. If you still have questions, feel free to leave a comment down below here on the YouTube video, or just send us a direct message on Instagram, or we're on all the socials. We have a Facebook page. Send us a direct message and we will try to answer those. You can also email us. Before we move on to kind of what we've been up to as travelers ourselves while on a contract right now, don't forget to check out our website. So our website is ryanandmeganorear.com. That's our central hub. We have articles on there. We have where you can get our recruiter recommendations. We have links to our videos on YouTube and kind of a whole catalog there. Our podcast stuff's on there. A ton is on there. Just go check it out, ryanandmeganorear.com, to learn more about this travel therapy lifestyle.
So moving on into what we've been up to, just a little update. Thanksgiving was this past week.
Yeah.
And
week ago or so.
Yeah. It's always Thursday, so week, technically. We drove back home for the long weekend because we're only about 2 hours away from home and saw everybody. And that was really, really lovely. We had a little scare with people being sick before Thanksgiving, not knowing if we were going to get together and be able to see each other.
It always happens around the holidays. Everyone chooses to get sick.
It does, but it all worked out. And it was really nice to come back home after being in the RV, but it was also really weird.
It was weird.
We'd only been here for a week and a half.
Most people don't do what we do. They don't own an RV and own a home and then like live like 2 different lives.
Well, it's the same
across them.
life.
It's the same life, but let us tell you, it feels weird. You're here in the RV and it feels homey and you feel fine. And then you go back to the house and it's like, oh, we have a house.
Oh,
And
this is home. This feels homey.
and it
This
feels
feels
homey.
fine.
This feels good. Oh, we're going to go back to an RV and live in that? That feels weird. And then now we're back here and I feel fine. It's a weird like mind shift, but
It's a little weird.
you really adjust quick. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I would say we settled into being in the RV really quickly. I mean, by the time Thanksgiving rolled around, we had only been here a week and a half, and I felt like we were already like in a pretty regular routine and rhythm, and the girls were doing well. So
I think a big thing
nice.
I think a big thing that people ask is, what do you do for the holidays as a traveler? And we would say you can do whatever the heck you want. And that's the amazing part. So in the past, we've taken like a full week off at Thanksgiving, a week and a half off at Christmas. Like in our contract, we were on contract and we just said, hey, we want these days off because we're going to fly back home and visit family. So we've flown back home and spent a whole like Thanksgiving week at home with family and doing all the festive stuff. We've also put the holidays kind of in between our contracts to where we kind of end a contract, we have Christmas, and then we're starting a new contract in the new year. We've also had family actually travel out to where we are. So when we were in Arizona, we had a Thanksgiving where Megan's family came out, and we did Thanksgiving at the Grand Canyon and at Las Vegas. It was great. So that's another cool opportunity as a traveler is you can bring your family out for a holiday, change it up a little bit. Don't go to grandma's. Go to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, but it went really well, and I think it was really cool to watch Reagan come back to the house and kind of realize that she was at her house, and then she remembered like where her toy room was and her bedroom, and she went crazy playing with all the toys that she hadn't seen for a week and a half. So that was fun. And we've come back to the RV and transitioned back really well. So it's going good, I think.
It's going good. Settling into our, I say our because I'm so used to both of us traveling, but you haven't been working that
No.
in a long time.
Mm-mm.
How's it feel?
Great.
She loves it. Well, I'm settling into my travel contract here. It's a home health gig. I'm on my own, seeing patients, driving quite a bit. Tis we are in rural Missouri. So, that happens. That's very common for home health. But kind of getting my flow. This is my third week.
Mm-hmm. Usually
Those first 2 weeks are the roughest. You're learning, kind of getting your flow. Third week, you start to fall into it. So I'm starting to fall into it with the documentation system. And that's very common for me is kind of those first 2 weeks are kind of hectic. And then this week I start feeling good. And then, we only have like 10 more weeks after this, which is crazy.
It always goes so fast.
It goes fast, but it goes slow, but it goes fast. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're going to have to figure out like what our game plan is after this contract. Because our whole thing was we just got to get through a contract and see if we can do it. And we're only 3 weeks in, but I already feel like I need to start contemplating like what do we do next? What is our point in traveling with the girls?
Typically, since we have a family, we will look 2 months to a month and a half out and start talking to our recruiters about what are we going to do? Are we going to extend or are we going to start looking for a job? Now, I will say that's kind of early. If you're a solo traveler or even a couple,
I would say a month is still a good time.
I would say a month is when you want to start looking. Why we say that is because usually more than a month, people they want you there like right now, and that's too long for them to wait, or the jobs change so much that, again, they don't want to wait, and so they change by the time. So a month is probably good to kind of start negotiating those talks. The other thing that is something to consider is right now we're going into December. This is the start of the travel therapy lull. And so December, January, February, and then kind of in a little bit of March is when there's this dip in the travel jobs available. So it's kind of a good time to be on contract and kind of ride that out because you just won't have as many options. There'll be jobs out there, but there's just not as many options because every facility is trying to figure out what their budget is for the next year and if they need travelers, if they can afford travelers. So there's always this lull every year. All right, before we hop into what is good, what is poopy, let's go ahead and if you want to live this lifestyle, if you want to try travel therapy, you need a good recruiter, feel free to reach out to us. We always love to share the recruiters that we personally work with and trust. And so all we need is you to click on that link. It'll take you to a little form. You'll fill it out. You'll put your name, your email address. That sends us an email and gives us a little information so we can kind of customize. We can kind of pair you with the many travelers we work with to what fits you best and what travel company fits you best, because we work with multiple companies and a recruiter from each. So if you need recommended recruiters, go ahead and click that link in the description.
All right, we're going to move on to our last segment of the night, and that is what's been good, what's been poopy. I have to think of mine, so why don't you go ahead with what's been good?
So what's been good is one of the travel companies we work with have a great recruiter there. We've been taking multiple contracts with them. If you want to know who that recruiter is, click our link below for the recommended recruiters. But for that company, they offer a all-inclusive trip to Mexico. Now you got to earn it. It's an earning thing, but I have never seen any other travel company do something like this. And it's not like a business trip. You're not going there for professional development or skills building. It's a true I don't remember. I think it's like 5 days, 4 nights, all paid for. Your plane tickets are paid for. You get to go all-inclusive resort in Mexico, and we earn the trip this year. And so how you earn the trip is you got to get 4 points. You get points by completing contracts with them, taking an extension. There's incentives to stay with that company, but that's really cool. So if you stay with them, then you can earn a trip. And then you can earn more points and bring a friend. And so my friend is my wife. I earned the trip. We're bringing, both of us are going. We actually earned the trip last year. And the night before we were leaving, Reagan broke her leg. So we didn't get to go. But this year, we're going. We're bubble wrapping all the kids leading up to the trip. And we're real excited for it, though. Our friends who are also travelers who've been in multiple of our YouTube videos, Evan and Leah, they're also going. And so
we're pretty stoked.
We're really excited. It'll be fun. I don't think we've been on a all-inclusive resort trip since our honeymoon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Eons ago.
Oh, forever ago. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So what's your poopy?
What's poopy? To bring back the weather, we're in Missouri and it's starting to get cold. It's starting to drop below freezing. If you've never been in an RV before, there's different things you got to watch because you don't want your pipes to freeze and then you cause a leak and then that's an issue. But also, I think the big thing why I'm saying this is poopy is every morning I got to go skimpy out to my car and start it up because it is like iced over or frosted over every morning. And so it has to run there for a little bit. That poor thing, my home health car gets driven so much, but I have to thaw it before I can start my day. So that's, winter.
So sad.
Some people love winter. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of poopy to me.
Well, maybe we can go south.
Yeah, that's what we should have done. Winter, go south. That's what everyone says when you have an RV. Well, you could have took your RV down south.
There are quite a few people here at our RV park who are doing the winter too.
Who are travelers, like travel nurses, travel surgery tech, and then a lot of line workers, pipe fitters, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, Megan, have you thought enough?
I think so.
Okay.
And I'm just going to come up with it.
What's been good?
What's been good is our health, I would say. The fact that we were able to get together for Thanksgiving, that all of us have stayed healthy relatively so far, that's huge. To not be getting sick, not getting cold. Lainey hasn't been sick since she was born. So that's a huge blessing. I'm really glad.
That's a huge blessing, and winter's coming. So drink that vitamin C.
I know. Yeah.
What's been poopy?
Our budget this month. Black Friday, Cyber
Christmas
Monday
is coming.
I kind of went with the whole idea of getting all of the shopping done in November. So hopefully our December budget can be on track,
We're those people that we usually keep a pretty good budget. But when we buy presents for Christmas, it's like we lump it all into November and we're way over budget. We're talking way too much. We spent way more than we earned, and we just kind of all lump it into November, and we're just like, well, we did bad that month. Well, we're starting over in December.
What, we have one more day, 1 or 2.
I don't know if anyone else does that, but that's what we do. We just lump it all in
Yeah.
November. We say, oh, no, you November, and then we move on.
Yeah, I'm kind of scared to like look at it and have to balance it and everything. But at least, you know, like the majority of the stress of like finding things is done.
We can't have that stress for a balanced budget.
And then in December, hopefully when I go to look at it at the end of the month, it'll be a lot better.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. We enjoyed doing it. And so next, watch another video of ours. That'd be awesome. If you could, hit the like button. Consider subscribing. Megan, you got something else?
And if you've been listening, you know that our RV mattress was one of our poopies one week.
Oh.
So that's another what's been good. It's where we just bit the bullet to get a new one.
There's a mattress coming in from Amazon, actually.
We'll see.
We'll see how it is. We'll let you know. But until next time, see ya.